joining us to talk spending in D.C., Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. He's the ranking member of the Environment and Public Works Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The analogy sausage being made is thrown around a lot, but we can't help but wonder how this is really going to play out. The House is one thing. I don't know whether Speaker Pelosi gets this done or what happens, but you know, the whole idea of what happens in the Senate seems to be dependent on some senators that don't seem to be on board as far. Do you pass Joe Manchin in the halls, Senator? Does he give you any indication that he's going to walk away from saying that we should pause on this and take off some time before we do it?
Well, Joe, first of all, you're right. The difference between the House and the Senate is pretty dramatic, and Speaker Pelosi has her hands full keeping everybody in line with a 3-vote margin, and a lot of moderate Democrats very uncomfortable. The Senate has, in addition to a 50-50 Senate and key senators like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema on the Democratic side, remembering that all 50 Republicans oppose this. There's absolutely nobody going the other direction. So we're solid. So it does come down to one or two that can stop it. The most of the power in the Senate for a senator comes from their ability to obstruct, and Joe Manchin has a lot of ability to obstruct. Do I know Joe Manchin? Do I see him? Yes. My office is real close to his. We dine together on a regular basis. He's a good friend. I think West Virginia and North Dakota are very similar culturally and politically in many respects. And the thing I know about Joe is he's going to do what he thinks is the right thing to do, not just for the country, but especially for the people he represents. And a lot of people look at the transactions of Washington and the way we play in the sandbox together, and they wonder what's up. And at the end of the day, we all represent some people, and those people often will drive how we vote. And Joe represents some really good common sense people in West Virginia. So I think he's taking the right attitude. He just wants to slow things down. He wants to make sure that people aren't hurt. He wants to make sure that job creators aren't killed, and and that we don't continue to contribute to inflation. And frankly, to me, that's one of the biggest problems going forward with the Build Back Better plan, is that it would add to inflation pressure at a time when it needs no more inflation pressure in this economy.
You know, Senator, energy prices are notoriously hard to understand why they do what they do. They're all over the place, and it backed off a little, not quite as bad, but you might know a little bit about it, being from North Dakota. What happened in the last couple of years? Did we mess something up? Is any of this self-inflicted? Suddenly we're begging OPEC for help when just a couple of years ago, I thought that we were the swing producer with all of our horizontal drilling.
Right. Yeah. Well, the innovators in North Dakota and Texas and other places around our country made us the player. When we lifted the oil export ban in the Obama administration, you saw the WTI and the Brent, for example, on crude oil come closer together in price. Refined product is largely defined by the Brent price, the international price. So we became the price setter, if you will. Now, obviously, there are other players in the world, particularly Saudi Arabia and OPEC, that can manipulate the markets with an oversupply. But when we went into the pandemic, I mean, let's face it, that's not our fault. That's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault. Obviously, demand went way down, and with that, of course, drilling slowed down. But you saw the Saudis and OPEC flooding our market at a time when our domestic producers were slowing down, and that warped the situation. But coming out of the pandemic, when demand was going back up, in comes Joe Biden, and he shuts down supply by the prohibition on federal lands, the drilling on federal lands. Then he begs OPEC for help to produce more so that he doesn't have to suffer as the inflation president. These are self-inflicted. These are the direct result of policies that stifle domestic development and then begs for global development. And here's the worst part, Joe. At this time all of this is happening, he greenlights Nord Stream 2, the gas line from Russia to many of our allies in Europe. And not only is that just bad economics, but it's bad for the environment and bad for the climate. Natural gas produced in Russia and sent over pipeline to our allies emits 41% more greenhouse gas emissions through the life cycle of that gas than natural gas produced in the United States, liquefied and sent on a ship to the same countries. So it's contrary to everything that he says he believes. Bad for the economy, bad for jobs, bad for national security, and bad for the climate. Other than that, it's a great idea. I mean, it makes no sense.
Senator, I wanted to read you a quote. This is from the CFO of Chevron, and in many ways, it's the antithesis of what you just said in terms of why prices have gone up. He says the rise in prices, quote, feels more cyclical than structural. We had rapid demand decreases last year, followed by rapid increases this year, and it's hard for supply to adjust as quickly as demand, and it does appear that supply is lagging. He was asked directly about this. This is somebody who's the CFO of one of the largest energy companies in the world, and effectively was saying it wasn't a function of the things that you just discussed.
Well, except he's arguing with himself. Now, remember, I come from North Dakota. We are, largely independent producers. We have large ones as well, multinationals. But if you're a Chevron CEO, you're going to take a different view of the supply when your supply is produced wherever you want to produce it. But when you're landlocked in the middle of the North American continent, granted, I take a little bit different view. But even in his own argument, he's right. Supply doesn't just ramp up real quickly, but it ramps up a lot quicker than it used to. And there is an anti-supply policy coming from Joe Biden. I mean, he's the one that shut down leases on federal lands. And federal lands are a very important part of the value chain of oil production and natural gas production in the United States.
Senator, I'm not disagreeing with you. And I think actually there's going to be potentially long-term effects as a result of that. The question is whether those effects are being seen in the price today, and that's where I think there's actually a real question.
Sure, but the price today is certainly part of the fundamentals of supply and demand and getting them back to balance, and we'll get there. But we're not going to get there if places like North Dakota have to continue to produce 400,000 barrels less. Or, by the way, there's also the uncertainty of the infrastructure that moves the product, the shutting down of pipelines while you're allowing the green lighting pipelines in Russia. All of that contributes. And while it may not contribute to the moment, it certainly contributes to the speculation going forward and the investment that's attracted by certainty and shed by uncertainty that's created by these policies. So I think it's both near-term and long-term, certainly probably more of a long-term effect, but it's all bad. And it's contributing. It's contributing to the supply shortage, and that's contributing, obviously, to inflation.
So, Senator, Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee, ranking member. So that covers a wide range of things. We can talk the most recent infrastructure bill and how that's going to roll out, when we'll see some results from that. But also, do you think that the government is responding to the supply chain disruptions, the problems at the ports, the congestion, the problem with getting people to drive trucks to bring the goods from the ports to the rest of the country? Is that being addressed? What do we need to do?
Well, there's several things. First of all, with regard to the infrastructure package, there's a situation, and the reason I supported it, and I supported it strongly, was because that contributes to the supply side of the economy. We've been stimulating the demand side of the economy somewhat appropriately for a long time. I think way over the top in the last 8-10 months. When we started seeing inflation, I think the Federal Reserve gets some of the blame for that with a dovish attitude. I think the Biden administration certainly does, with adding another $2 trillion of spending in March, and now looking to add $2 to $4 trillion more now. But on the infrastructure package, that's contributing to the supply side. That should help. Now, again, that's not going to be immediate. With regard to the bottlenecks at the ports and things, no, I don't think enough is being done. In fact, I would say, getting back to that, all that free money, a lot of it paying people to not work, a lot of it now in the BBB bill to sort of give money to folks without any work requirements. I think we have certainly contributed, I say we, the federal government, particularly the Biden administration, contributed to the problems at the in the supply chain by paying people to not work. And that, so there's a lag in getting all of those people back, whether it's truck drivers or workers at the port itself, everybody up and down the supply chain. But we also have to remember it's a global challenge as well. So, yeah, I think we've contributed to it. I don't know how much more could be done, but I am anxious to get some of that money now to work, building the infrastructure at ports and waterways and railroads and highways and bridges and all of the things that get North Dakota wheat to a pasta plant so that you guys can eat it in your favorite restaurant in Manhattan. It's really important that we move product from start to market.
All right, Senator. Thanks. You had any snow yet in North Dakota?
Oh, yes. We've had some snow. Fortunately, most of it's melted. But we're making the transition now, Joe. We are going to do our part. And a lot of North Dakotans, while we produce a lot of energy, we also get very concerned about the growing cost of home heating this time of the year. You talk about a major inflationary pressure, not to mention the price of a turkey is going way up.
Right. Okay. All right, Senator. Thank you. Senator Cramer.
Thank you.